with multiplications of that, it does not always provide the best answer.
Basically, the more she does the spell, the less likely the answers that she gets are actually true.
So with that, you guys kind of stride in. None of the guards step up to intercept you as you guys walk forward, and the king steps down, walking towards you guys, kind of like regarding you for a moment, and then you actually see behind him a young boy, no older than 10 years old, standing standing at attention next to the larger throne,
Okay.
kind of regarding the situation with rapt attention.
As we approach them and we get to like the appropriate distance, I don't know if I have to roll to guess it or whatever. I'm actually going to take a knee, like just for like a couple of like again several seconds or whatever, or maybe until he tells us to rise, whatever I think the culture would be.
Yeah. So
Gadira did the same.
The culture of royal splendid trees actually tends to be relatively similar, with the exception of a couple of different places, like where Gadira comes from, Thronebend, where the dwarves are. There's a little bit difference that comes with because they are a very religious society. There's a lot of different stuff that happens there, but here it's pretty simple. But as you kind of do that, he almost looks surprised for a moment, and then he just kind of like shakes himself from his reverie, and he says, "Rise."
Stand up.
And so we rise.
And as you stand up, he has a smile on his face, and this is not a devious smile. This is not a forced smile. This is a very genuine smile, and you see that his eyes kind of reflect that as he walks up to you guys very easily, and he extends a hand to Ingram first.
Mm-hmm. I'll shake his hand.
And he goes to each of you in turn, shaking your hands and looking in your eyes, including Lore, and he says, "A pleasure. I had thought it would take you longer to get here, but I guess even my spies can be wrong from time to time. I assume that you are Ingram, Gadira, and Lore. Am I correct?"
And I say, and because he's saying this, I'm gonna do like I'm pretty obvious of a person. Look around to see if the teeth of a trap are about to snap.
No, none of these guys are or at least they don't look like anything's about to happen.
Can I make an insight roll?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if I could do that.
Please, go ahead.
You're doing that. Laura is just completely absorbed in the guy. In fact, Laura is probably eating some rations, and they're like grumbling all over him. He's not being very regal.
And with the insight, you actually see the soldiers seem very tense. However, they don't seem to be like preparing for an attack. It's more just like the tenseness of a soldier seeing a new person speaking to his commander. Mm-hmm. They don't know what you guys are going to do, but their hands are not on their weapons. They're not going to jump into combat. However, if you guys tried something, they obviously would. Mm-hmm. Even more strange is the king himself is just very like open. He doesn't have any weapons on him. He just stands in front of you guys, almost like a peer, not expecting any special treatment. He looks you guys over and he says, "I imagine the trip has been something of a problem for you. I apologize. I usually would have more hospitality to heroes such as yourselves. But alas, in these trying times, we are forced to make ends meet." He looks around and he says, "Not a very good place to have a private conversation, but it will have to do. The trappings of royalty, unfortunately, they pervade my every step." He looks back at the child and he gives a smile and he beckons him forth. The boy at that will kind of bustle up to him and look at him, and he smiles and looks back to you. He says, "I can only guess what you've come here to ask, but far be it from me to deprive you of your mission. How can I help?"
With all due respect, am I supposed to be speaking to you? And I gesture over to the younger boy, and I say, "Or the boy."
He sits there. He kind of looks questioning for a moment, and then he obviously realizing what you're saying, he nods. He says, "Well, I imagine that would be your choice. I am the current king of this land, but it is not by right. I am here simply because the commander of the military, the last living line of blood for that stands between the throne and my son here, has granted me legitimacy. Without him, there's very little that stands in the way between my son and the throne. So, the question falls to you, Kira.
You are a steward then, and not the actual king, or at least not the one that is actually meant to be king moving forward.
My title officially is King Consort, as Missy, or as our queen, has is still technically in charge, even though she has not returned. I have every expectation that she will be returning at some point from her journey.
We are not here to buck the power, and if you are the current power, and obviously your boy's interests are in mind, then I will speak to you. But understand this, everything that we speak of, it is on behalf of the people, the weak, the suffering, those that are not able to lift a blade or a shield to defend themselves when the time calls for it. So, with that transparency in our efforts here, we speak on behalf of Ilmater and all of the people that he looks after.
Then welcome to my court, children of Ilmater. While I have not personally paid reverence to him in my lifetime, I have nothing but the utmost respect for his followers, and I can see that you are truly devout.
While you still breathe, there is still time to pay your respects to him. And if this war continues on, I'm sure you will, willingly or not, before you die. So why don't we avoid things happening that way by ending this war, by ending this horde, by uniting forces of your kingdom and the one to the south of here that we come from, or at least that we represent.
I would gladly lend my aid to you. However, our people... However, my people would be less than happy to receive the news that I am taking soldiers from protecting our city to move south, and especially, as I imagine your intention, to free the people of Thrumbin. The people of Demont have seen much in the way of travesty at their hands. Many years ago during the war, it was by their hands that hundreds of their people died, and many more that died after the war due to their harsh restrictions on arcane magics. But I am willing to let bygones be bygones, but there is a man who stands in our way. A lord in the city, the only person who has any legitimacy to challenge my rule, and the person who fully backs my son. The easiest way for you to proceed from here would be simply to force me to stand aside. There's little I can do to stop you, and I know my son itches for the throne. He simply respects me too much to take it from me. But if you put legitimacy to him, if you tell me to stand aside, I will, willingly.
I do not care about the past. Those that are dead no longer suffer. I care about the present. And in the present, there are people suffering. Let me ask you a question. You have little experience in war except for this. I get that. But in war, do you want to see your enemies suffer or just fall?
I care little for what happens to the enemy. I care only for the people I watch over.
And so a quick death is favored. Yes?
Indeed.
Have you ever seen a trap for a mouse?
A number of them, yes.
The best traps are the ones that snap shut. The ones that kill the mice quickly rather than slowly rot their stomachs from the inside out, slowly poisoning them. The way that these traps work is that there is a hard piece of wood or stone and another very quick moving slab of metal that comes from the other side. What we need to do is have one of our kingdoms be the wood and the other one be the piece of metal. They are caught between our trap. We just need to trigger it.
A rather visceral image, but nonetheless, there is wisdom in your words. Well, then I will call the commander of the military. I will prepare the things on my side. And then when the time is right, I will cede power to my son and give the people a strong leader. I will be the wood to the metal of the south. And perhaps together, we might close the trap on our enemies.
There are two things that we must discuss first, then. First, for our side of the trap to appropriately act, we will need some support. Support in your mages traveling with us to aid us in our part of the war. The fact that they down there don't like the arcane will not be a problem. I can assure you on that. And perhaps this will even broker new, open alliances moving forward. The second part about this is your son is young and needs somebody wise to guide him. Is there already somebody set to do this? Or are you still seeking someone?
There is someone who I would have guide him. The man who was meant for the throne.
Then, if that person should survive and guide him, do you need another opinion of this person, or are you satisfied?
I have made my opinion of this man, and I don't think that there will be any. And then the doors burst open, and you see
Immediately the sword comes out and whips around, because that's just his reaction. Just how he is.
As you do that, you grab your sword. Make me a wisdom saving throw.
Sure. Suck at those.
Wisdom saving throw.
Hey!
So as you
Jesus.
grab your sword, you feel like this overwhelming sense to not pull it. You like something in your brain screams at you not to pull your sword, but your character just being so martial and this being such like a muscle reflex, you're still able to pull your sword. And with that, like everyone in the room just draws their blade. But then the king just hold, and you see two guards dragging a person in, and you guys instantly recognize the person between them as Garrett, and they throw him down at the floor. And
dear.
I put the sword back and shrug my shoulders and turn back to the king.
And you see his face is completely changed. You see unbridled rage as he looks at the slumped form in front of him. He says, Garrett Haley, you scoundrel. You made your way hundreds of miles to my court. And Garrett kind of stands up looking at you guys. He says, hey everyone. I got in. It's nice to see that you guys made your way here. And then the king just looks confused for a moment. He says, you're with him?
Not exactly.
He was our shepherd.
A more
More or
foul
less.
shepherd you could not have chosen.
We
This
did
man-
not choose.
I nod.
Yeah.
This
We
man
know.
This man is blackened by his exploits. So, then you will not stop me if I am to put him to justice.
He is here as an envoy from the city that we represent. If you wish to lock him up and flog him for past transgressions, I would not mind that, but to take his life is something that you cannot do for us to successfully defeat this enemy.
Man has uses. Few, but some.
You may also not break his fingers or remove them from his hands. They are important to how he has aided us thus far in this war effort.
Garrett just looks very startled, like, don't give him ideas. And you see, for a moment, the fiery rage behind the king's eyes, but then he just kind of, yielding to your wisdom, he calms himself, and he says, well, and then in this moment, I will defer to you, my son. And he looks at the child, who kind of looks up to him with a mix of fear and confusion in his eyes. He says, Daniel, I've had you sit by my side, and I know that you sit quietly, because of her age, but I need you to make a decision. In this time, you must be a king. There stands before you a criminal, but this criminal can serve a purpose. What say you? The boy kind of looks up at you, and with a voice that's obviously shaken with a bit of unnerve, he says to Ingram, "You truly believe this man can be of assistance?" Then I say, keep him under guard, but do not harm him. When the travelers leave, he leaves with them.
I don't know. Like, I feel like, so in my head, I'm like, I have multiple things going in my head. So I'm actually going to say to the boy, be like, Your Majesty, I will not question your wisdom. Simply offer advice. That advice being, this is a man who claims to worship Ilmater, but has done little in suffering to take it from the weak. It seems as though he has brought suffering to your people, suffering to your father. Perhaps a flogging would do good to ease some of that suffering that he's done in the past, and it will also show the strength of your spine in handling those that have transgressed your kingdom.
He sits there quietly for a moment as the I'm sorry, Ingram, was that intentional? The spell that you cast?
Absolutely, it's not a spell. It's just an innate ability to see if that kid's an evil motherfucker or not.
You do detect evil emanating from the child,
but not like it's one of those
it's
things
not,
where, yeah.
So this says specifically a strong evil registers, but it's not. It is pretty much the least amount that your spell can detect.
Yeah. Okay. It's very faint. So I'm like, I'm getting.
He looks normalish though.
Yeah, I'm getting a nauseating odor and everything from him, but it's nothing that's turning my stomach. It's just kind of like leaving almost like a metallic taste or whatever in my mouth.
Exactly.
Which I'm too accustomed to.
Maybe we don't flog Garrett so that he remains loyal to the cause and we
maybe
can win
we
war.
Don't do that. Listen, I never said I was worshiping your fucking god. I'm here for coin.
Oh, language! There is a child in the room.
Oh, gods above. Listen, Adrian, I know I maybe pissed you off a little bit. I maybe stole a couple thousand gold from you, but
Garrett,
there's nothing we can't put behind us.
you have a silver tongue, but sometimes silver needs to be melted and repurposed. Don't give us a reason to do that.
Okay. And the child sits there quietly, staring at him. You see his eyes are like very hard for a child of that age, as he just looks him down, and you see the Garrett almost wither under this child's gaze. And then he abates and he looks at you. He says, "I appreciate your wisdom, but I stand by my ruling."
I nod to that. I'm genuinely happy, and I will make sure I take a full step back.
Father, call the commander of the armed forces. I to issue an order for a mobilization. You will have your troops. It will take us weeks to prepare them, but take the message back to your people. You have not been abandoned. The people of Selavu, the people of Thrombin, the people of this continent will once again know the might and splendor that is Demont. Take my message to your people and go swiftly. I will prepare you steeds, not the steeds you came in, magical steeds to spirit you back quickly to your location, and with them, take the message that you have that Demont stands behind you. He walks up specifically a little past you to Gadira, and he looks you in the eyes and he says, "Our people, they've started opposition for many years, but allow me to be the first to welcome you as a friend of this court." He extends a hand to you. He's a young kid, so he's actually not a little bit shorter than you.
Can I roll an insight to see if he truly means that?
Go ahead.
Or if he's like trying to deceive us. All right. 15.
There is a genuine sense to him, though he does seem to be putting a little bit of show about it.
Okay. She takes his hand and she says,
May our combined forces bring good into this world. For our people are one.
He nods and he looks at the men of the court standing around him, and he says, "Well, someone get me my commander." And he walks over to the throne and he sits there, the proper throne. He sits and looks at it for a moment, and then he turns and he sits. His legs even too short to sit to reach the ground, but he sits in the throne. And with that, the castle begins to bustle with activity. Adrian just kind of looks appreciatively. Taking his crown off, he walks up to his young son and places the crown on his head and whispers something to him and gives him a hug. And then he walks back to you guys and he says, "My part in this is done. I will be in the city for a time, but after that, I'm going to need to go look for my wife. I wish you the best of luck. Your task ahead is not going to be easy, to say the least. And even with this victory, there's still much ahead. Do you know how the country fell so quickly to this horde? Have you ever heard of a demonologist? There are.
Do we want us to roll something for
Make
that?
a religion.
Religion? Sure.
I'm good at those. Supposedly. But we're
Nice.
Maggie!
21. There we go.
So,
I'm glad Gadira is smart.
you two have heard of the term demonologist. They're pretty much a practice of people who study demons and people, not just demons specifically. It's just kind of a catch-all term for people
Occult.
who study people of the that study the occult. Gadira, you know, in this context, he's specifically referring to a sect of an actual sect of casters, summoners who practice the art of summoning demonic servants to their side. Though once again, it's a catch-all term for like all of the fiends and demons of the underplanes. And these guys will actually either make contracts or just bind demons to their service.
So Gadira answers, and she's like,
Yes, I know of this. But why do you speak of it?
Because the reason he was able to take these places so quickly, the reason he has been able to siege our wall so incessantly, is because in his service there is not one, not a group, but an army of such demonologists. I do not know how was able to obtain the power and the prestige to get such a well-organized force, but I can warn you that you will face such creatures ahead of you. I would marshal all of the support you can from the goodly clerics, and maybe even some from the clerics of the darker gods in the city of Selavu. See if you might marshal them to the purpose of being able to hold off these creatures, for the battle ahead will require combat with such creatures. And more importantly, if my spies are correct, the reason I heard your names is because the enemy has heard your names, and they know your tale. And they know who you are, and they'll be coming for you.
Well, it is not as though we have been silent about it, that is for sure.
I wish you the best of luck, and if I may just give you a bit of advice, be wary. The task of reconquest, of taking back what is ours, is the easy part. It's what comes after that will be difficult. But given that you are truly goodly, I'm not afraid. I leave this realm to greater hands than mine. Good luck. He'll put a hand on his shoulder, Ingram's shoulder, and shake each hand of Gadira and Lore, and then from there he'll make his way out of the
as he tries to leave, I would catch up with him first and just be like, Lore has tiny bit of advice. When father leaves clutch, often beast come and bite the heads off young. If you want to see your little wormling grow up to be a king, I would stay by his side.
He will not meet me. The man that is
Oh.
coming to meet you, he's going to be the one who will make sure that my wormling reaches adulthood.
I'll just, Lord, give warning.
He smiles and he says, "Trust me when I say, I have been a capable father, but I was never meant for the role."
With that, he just kind of like goes back to the other three and shrugs a bit. It's like, that kid's going to get killed.
And as you guys sit in the on the precipice of this tumultuous time, you guys hear a set of heavy footfalls. You turn to see a rather large elf striding down the hallway in thick but ornate leathers, a long curved blade on his back. He strides with a sense of purpose, and his hair is cut very short in a military style. As he steps in the room, you see all of the men stand once again at attention, and he strides up to you and he says, "So this is what Selavu has sent as their emissaries. Could be worse. I am the Lord Commander of the army of Demont, and I stand with you for the coming conflict." And with that, let's take our second break.
Awesome. Alrighty. Then we'll see you all in just a couple of minutes for...
See you on war!
Okay, yeah, a couple minutes. Bye.
Okay.